Hello and welcome to another episode of the Emetophobia-Free podcast. Today we are welcoming back the lovely Sam Marker. Hello, Sam.
Hello, Michelle. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I am wonderful today.
Good. Lovely to have you back. Today, me and Sam are going to be talking about the 6 to 8 weeks that is written into the program. It's sort of sold as a 6 to 8 week training program and how that is important. It is such a regular question that we're faced with. It's a regular sticking point and a regular hurdle for the people that we work with. So I just want to give a little bit of background first about where this 6 to 8 week marker came from in the first place. So we did a research study, or Rob Kelly did a research study in 2014, where he took 62 people through the program. Not himself, but 62 people went through the program, and they all overcame their fear. Now, when they looked at the average time that it took for them to overcome their fear, it was 6.5 weeks across those 62 participants. And there are oodles of testimonials out there of people that said, I overcame it in less than that. You know, if you look at Lisa, one of our lovely coaches, she overcame it within 3 days. Now, she had a lot of years under her belt before that trying to overcome it. But when she really put the effort in and applied it, it was 3 days. Bree was only a couple of weeks. Another coach, she was a couple of weeks before she overcame it. So you absolutely can overcome. It's entirely possible to overcome your fear in 6 to 8 weeks. Absolutely is. Now, what tends to happen is that people have the 6 to 8 week marker in their mind, but they have it as a sort of finish line or an end goal or I'm going to be done and completely finished by 6 to 8 weeks, which may be the case, but it may not. And if it's not the case for you, if you're listening to this and you've been working for a few months, a year long, it doesn't matter that you didn't overcome it in 6 to 8 weeks. The process, the journey is still entirely predictable. If you continue to work at it and put the right amount of effort in and the right type of effort in, you will overcome it. It may just take you a little bit longer. And there is another podcast about why it takes some people longer than others. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the problem not being the 6 to 8 week label, because it is something that's entirely predictable and doable. And the reason that it's there and the reason that we hammer it home is because we really want you, when you start the program, to go for it. Feet first, going for an all-in-one, as an all-in-one block. Treat it like a training program. Really go for it and apply it every day, because that is how you're going to get to the end goal quicker, or as quick as you can.
Yes.
What we don't want you to do is go, okay, well, I'm going to read the first couple of chapters and do the first couple of actions and then have a few weeks off. And the reason for that is because you're in the habit at the moment of creating emetophobia. You're in the habit of thinking in really powerless and unhelpful ways. So when you are in that habit, and when you start learning what you're doing, and you learn about the habits that you're in, and you learn about those things that you are doing day in, day out to maintain emetophobia, you then need to do consistently the work to break that habit every day.
Absolutely.
Now, just like with any habit, it takes that consistency and that showing up every day and doing it to break it and then form a new one. Would you agree?
Absolutely. With that? Oh, 1,000%. That's exactly why it took me about a year to get to where I really wanted to be. It wasn't, so a lot of people, whenever they go through this, they have this perfectionistic kind of view of what being over emetophobia looks like. I actually didn't have that, because for me, I didn't care. And I remember saying this to my coach, I don't care if I do panic whenever I get sick. I just don't want to panic every day in between. Okay. So that was sort of my view of it. Now, the idea of panicking when I'm sick just seems preposterous. Like, I feel like I'd have to try, you know what I mean? Yeah. But that was my goal. So it was a very realistic goal, but I didn't really fully understand how much effort I needed to put in. I wasn't putting in the right kind of effort is what my problem was. Yes. I would feel a lot better and kind of just forget about the program for a little while and really kind of forget about my skills until something popped up, and then I would go, oh, I really could have used better coping skills in that situation, or I really had some like catastrophic lenses on with this. It would have made it much easier if I didn't. And what I ended up doing was going back and taking myself through the program a second time
Okay.
and putting in that consistent effort, like every day, challenging some powerless language.
Yeah.
Really, one of the biggest things for me was changing catastrophic language in my daily speech instead of,
Okay.
oh my gosh, I'm starving or I'm so exhausted right now. Little things like that. Because when I would encounter experiences where I'd create a bit of anxiety over it, it helped me to catch it immediately.
Yeah.
Because if I would think, oh, I can't do this, and I'd be like, I don't say that anymore. That's not the right thing. And it keeps you from going into that spiral. So it
Yeah.
was really when I started making a really conscious decision to actively engage in the things that I knew to do that it
Yes.
started to become second nature.
Brilliant.
And
Brilliant.
that's really the effort we talk about.
Yes. So just to clarify and make sure that I'm understanding from my end, when we talk about the right kind of effort, and you were saying, the catastrophic language in my day-to-day life, we can't just apply these things. And this is another pitfall that emetophobes tend to fall into, is
Yep,
just applying these skills when it comes to your emetophobia. So when
exactly.
it comes to just eating or just going on planes or just traveling, when I create anxiety, I need to apply these skills. That's not the case. You need to apply these skills across the board. So if
Mm-hmm.
you are generally quite relaxed, I don't know, when you're doing your work or you're studying, you still need to be listening in and catching your thinking and going, hang on, am I being catastrophic here? Am I being black and white here? And really putting in the effort to spot all of these skills and to apply them in all areas of your life
Yes.
as often as you possibly can. Now, when we say all areas of life as often as possibly can, research shows we have about 50,000 thoughts a day. Okay. And if you are awake from like 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. at night, that's about a thought a second. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of thoughts every day.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And you would be forgiven for not catching every single one of those 50,000 thoughts. In fact, you can't possibly do that because that's a perfectionist thing to be thinking that you want to be doing. However, you want to be catching as many as you can and checking
Yeah.
in with as many as you can and being aware of as many as you can across the board throughout the day in all scenarios, because that's how you're going to break that habit of not thinking in these unhelpful ways.
Absolutely.
Is really applying this across the board. So that's really,
Yeah.
really interesting, Sam. And the fact that it took you a year or about that to get to where you
Yeah.
wanted to be, I was around 9 months. Okay. So I wasn't over it in 6 to 8 weeks either, but differently to you, my problem was perfectionism. Okay. I
Okay.
was a perfectionist and I was thinking, okay, well, to be completely over emetophobia, I need to be completely anxiety free and be able to do all of the things that I want to be able to do with no negative thoughts at all, no unhelpful thoughts at
Yes.
all.
Lots of my
Completely,
clients.
completely. Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Completely
That's
free.
that's the mindset. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely. If I still have the unhelpful thoughts, if I'm going out for tea and I still generate the thought, oh, I might get food poisoning if I go out for tea, then I'm not over emetophobia.
Yep.
Okay. Now, it took me a very long time to understand that the problem wasn't the unhelpful thought. The problem was how I was responding to it. Okay. And
Absolutely.
when I wasn't responding to it effectively, then I'd go down the rabbit hole and then I'd create the anxiety and then I'd create the stress. But when I stopped responding to it, when it was just an unhelpful thought that I was able to nip in the bud, then go and enjoy my evening, that's not a metaphobia because I wasn't
No.
creating the anxiety. I wasn't creating the fear. And I did believe I would cope, even if
Yeah.
I did go get food poisoning, which is very unlikely. I knew I would cope with it. So I knew
Mhm.
that. But I was still beating myself over the head with going, I'm still having this unhelpful thought, therefore I've still got a metaphobia. So I was likely over it earlier, but I had in my mind these perfectionist type thoughts, so I can't really identify when I got over it. I
Mhm.
also, you mentioned earlier, keeping hold of habits. Okay.
Yeah.
So I had overcome it at the 9 month point in my mind ish. But I was still, even after that, I was still smushing up crisps inside the packet and tipping it into my mouth, okay? Because that was my habit. I wouldn't
Yes.
have eaten them with my hands, right? Or chips, or whatever they're called, right? So I would get the packet, and instead of just opening it and eating it with my hands, I would crush the full packet and tip it into my mouth. So I didn't have to touch it. Now, I was still doing that, but I was eating sandwiches with my hands, but not the crisps. Okay?
Just
Habits. And
Yeah.
but the difference was I knew what to do to break that habit. I just didn't put the effort in, which links back to yours. Okay, so I knew what to do. I knew I had to step outside my comfort zone. I knew I had to imagine it going the way I wanted to. I knew I had to challenge that thinking. I knew exactly what to do. I just hadn't done it.
Yes. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that and that was your experience, because I really feel like that's the majority of people who aren't where they want to be at the end of the 8 weeks. That's the experience. It's you have in your mind, well, I created a little bit of anxiety about this, or I still had this unhelpful thought and therefore I'm not better. And that's simply not true, because when you're in a metaphobe, your comfort zone is so small. It's so small around you. You have places you can go, things, people that you can see. Some people have like safe people, like, well, that person got sick, I can never be around them again. Your world is so tiny. And so anytime you start expanding outside of your comfort zone, you're gonna feel uncomfortable. That is the nature of stepping outside of your comfort zone. And there is nothing wrong with being uncomfortable. It's perfectly fine, perfectly normal. That's where growth happens, when you can be a little uncomfortable and go, okay, but I'm handling this. And not only am I handling this, but like I'm handling this well. I'm kind of enjoying it, in fact.
Yes.
That's an amazing thing to get to do. But if you never feel uncomfortable, you never experience it. So I think for people listening that are, further along in the program, working with a coach, taking themselves through it, and they're like, yeah, but I still create a little bit of anxiety whenever I try to go out to eat or at the thought of going to a party. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's totally okay. You know the thing to do. You know how to challenge it. It's all right to feel uncomfortable. Lean into the discomfort and go, all right, I've done a lot of hard things. I can do this. I can absolutely do this. And it's really, the whole program is an active choice that you get to make to engage in new behaviors, to engage in new habits, to try something different than what has just been like your default mode for the last however many years you've been suffering with emetophobia.
Yes.
And the great thing is it doesn't matter what happened 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 2 hours ago. None of that anxiety matters. What matters now is you get to make a choice to do something different, engage in a different way of thinking, a different lens, and let that start to become your new normal. No matter what happens, you always have a choice to start over again. And that's what it is. A choice to step outside the comfort zone, a choice to change the lenses, to think differently. And I think that's so empowering. So when you have that option, it doesn't matter. Like, if you can get to the 6 to 8 weeks, awesome. But if you're not there, keep making the right choices.
Yes, because you'll get there.
You will get there. Absolutely.
Brilliant. So a good analogy that I often use when I'm describing the program to people who want to go through it with a coach is I describe it as almost like a series of driving lessons, right? So when I learned to drive, I showed up for my lessons. I booked a block of 10 lessons because you can pass your driving test in 10 lessons. I booked them, and every week I turned up and he showed me something new. First week it was, okay, well, we're going to learn how to do the gears, because it was a manual car. I drive an automatic now. I'm not sure I'd be able to drive a manual car. I'm sure I would. I'd have to remember it. But, I show how to do the gears and the clutch. And then next time we're going to do your mirror signal maneuver, and the next time we might reverse around a corner and parallel park. So each week there was a new skill. And in between those lessons, I would be getting in the car with my dad, and I'd be going on the beach, and I'd be driving, and I'd be practicing these skills. Now, I didn't pass within those 10 weeks. I needed 12 lessons. I wasn't ready at the end of the 10 weeks. I needed 12. And that's completely fine, right? I was like, okay, that's fine. I'll have another couple of lessons. Not a problem. Did that. I was then able to pass my driving test after the 12 lessons. But the day that I was handed my keys, the day that the driving instructor said, yes, you've passed, well done, congratulations, here you go, you're free to drive, I got in my car and I went, oh, crikey. Oh, what do I do here? Hang on, I'm on my own. Mirror signal, not sure. Okay. Now, I was not the most confident driver. I passed my test, right? I was categorically signed off. You're done. You can drive. But it still took me a lot of effort because it wasn't my habit. I wasn't in that habit yet of just getting in my car and driving. And that took me time and consistency and getting in my car time and time again and driving to the point now where I don't think about driving. I get in and drive and my thoughts is on the conversation I'm having with my toddler or the destination of where I'm going to, and I can drive for an hour and forget the whole journey because my brain's somewhere else. This is the same thing. So if you think about your sessions or the program, if you're going through it on your own, the program in its entirety as the lessons, those are the skills that you need. You're picking up the skills just like in those driving lessons. Now, reading that manual or coming to the sessions, you're gaining the skills. Just reading the manual or just turning up to the sessions isn't going to get you over emetophobia.
Nope.
It's not going to do it. Okay. It's the practice in between. It's the practice in between the sessions and it's the application of it. Okay. And what you then need to understand is you can be over emetophobia and it still feel a little bit clunky and you still need to be putting in consistent effort and consistent work for yourself and going, yeah, actually, this feels new to me. It feels strange that I'm sat here around this table and I'm feeling calm. This is bizarre, right? And you're still consistently practicing that. But that's all part of the process. Now, that might take you in its entirety, 3 to 4 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, 9 to 12 months. It doesn't actually matter how long it takes you. It's entirely predictable. If you go to those lessons, get to your sessions, read the manual, take the stuff in, and then apply it, you will get there. It's predictable.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that was one thing, I wanted to get across. The second thing, which is semi-related, a question I get asked a lot is, well, does it still take as much effort to be emetophobia-free as it does when you're learning to become emetophobia-free? So when you're going through the program. And the answer to that is no. Right? There's no two ways about that. When you have emetophobia, and I don't know about your experience, Sam, but when I had emetophobia, it was the most uncomfortable comfort zone there ever was. It was a really unpleasant experience, an unpleasant way to live, awful way to live, but it was an easy way to live because I knew what I was doing. I knew what emetophobia was. I knew how to be an emetophobe. I knew how to maintain it. It was easy. It was habitual. It just happened. I didn't really need to think about it. I just put those barriers in place for myself. I said no instead of saying yes. And it was an easy thing for me to maintain. When you go through this program, it feels effortful. Those 6 to 8 weeks or however long you're going through it for feel clunky. It feels awkward. It feels like you sat in that car and the driving instructor's going, okay, well, let's reverse around this corner. And you're going, am I doing this right? And this feels awkward and I've never done this before. That's what it feels like. And that's okay. That's how it should feel because you're breaking that old habit. You're in the habit of creating emetophobia. And when you break a habit, that takes effort and it takes mental effort. It's challenging. Absolutely. That's how it should feel. But then eventually, just like with driving, it becomes easy. It becomes just as easy to not create emetophobia as it was to create it. It's the effort in the middle. It's that learning and the application of the program. That's where the effort and the majority of the effort comes in. Would you agree?
1,000%. And you said this is semi-related, but when you were talking before, I was like, oh, this is sort of like how easy it is to become non-emetophobic. My brain went to the exact same place. But you're on autopilot with emetophobia. You're just living this emetophobic life, and it feels... The analogy I actually use to explain to people what that middle part feels like is like when you move. And like if you looked around the room that you're sitting in right now and you looked at everything there and you thought about packing it up in a box, you would go, oh my gosh, there is so much stuff in here. how did I get so much in this room? But the room, when you're sitting in it, doesn't feel overwhelming. It just
No.
feels like it always does. This is the room you're used to. But when you're packing things up and you're finally seeing all of those thoughts and behaviors that you engaged in, it can feel overwhelming and it can feel like a lot. But when you get to the new house and you unpack in a month or two, that's just your room again. That's
Yes.
just what you're used to. And it's so strange in that transition period to just feel okay. Like to put in this effort and then be okay. It's surprising. But now not being emetophobic is just it's so natural.
Yeah.
And to think about being sick, my husband and I had like a little baby case of food poisoning a couple weeks ago, and my stomach was cramping up really bad. I was sort of laying on the couch and
I've never heard of a baby case of food poisoning.
it wasn't like how everybody who's listening to this podcast is imagining it. There was just some like stomach cramps and not feeling generally okay. And I was like, do I
No.
want to take anything for this or do you just want to like let it go? And I was like, you know what? We'll just deal with it because worst case is I throw up and
Yeah.
then at least I can give, my experience to my clients because
Yeah.
I haven't been emetophobic for 10 years. I still haven't thrown up.
Have
Like
you
I
not?
haven't, no, I haven't done any of my safety seeking behaviors. I'm just not a puker. And I've had food poisoning twice and not thrown up. And I was like, okay, well, if I do throw up this time, it'll be a good experience to get to talk to my clients about. And that was just it. It was just like
Yeah.
this decision. And that just felt natural. Whereas years ago, oh no, I could have never imagined that. But
No.
the new emetophobia-free version of you can easily replace the emetophobia version of you and just become normal. It can
Yes.
become your everyday. But
Yes.
the 6 to 8 weeks, the people who get there, it's consistent effort.
Yes.
It's applying this to all of these different areas. And when you make this decision to be like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get over it, however it is, in whatever time frame, whenever you put your best foot forward, you are consistently engaging in the things that you've learned from the program.
Yes.
That's where you end up.
Yeah.
And the beautiful part is the longer you practice it, the more it just becomes natural.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't something that like you're going to feel better and then it's going to wear off and you're just going to start feeling bad again. You have to make a decision to engage in thoughts and behaviors that you know better than to engage in. And nobody's going to do that. Why would you ever go back to how you were before you understood how your brain worked and you understood the things that you could do to change your thinking? No one would ever go back to that. So the more you do it, the more it's just solidified into, well, this is just how I am now. I'm just a person that can handle things that life throws at them. And oh yeah, I guess throwing up is involved in that and I could handle that too.
Yeah.
And that feels really, really great. And it's worth all of the effort that you have to put in over the course of going through the program with yourself or with a coach. And even the work that comes in after. It's worth every bit of it to just live your life and feel like yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It is. It is. And I hear a few clients and on social media as well. And I think there was a lovely lady called Sophie who was on the podcast not long ago, and she said something similar. And she said, all the testimonials of people who say, oh, I'm over it, and I'm over it in 6 to 8 weeks. I got over 8 weeks, 6 weeks. She said it felt disheartening because I wasn't over it in 6 to 8 weeks. So I think that, the key takeaway today is that you absolutely can overcome it in 6 to 8 weeks, but that doesn't mean you have to. That doesn't mean that if you reach 6 to 8 weeks and you're not where you want to be, that you failed. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get where you want to go. It just means it'll take you a little bit longer. That's all it means. And I think if I'd have had the mindset when I set out on my journey that, okay, it's possible with 6 to 8 weeks and I'm going to really go for it because even if I'm not fully over it in 6 to 8 weeks, I'm going to feel miles better in 6 to 8 weeks, which I absolutely did. By the time I'd finished reading it through, I absolutely did. My anxiety was miles better and I felt much more confident within 6 to 8 weeks. But if I'd have had the mindset that, this is going to be a skill set for life. This is going to be something that I'm going to apply and use in every situation across the board. And I'm going to really benefit from doing this, doing it well, doing it consistently. And it doesn't matter how long it takes me, because every day I get a step closer to that life that I want. Every day I get a step closer to feeling the way that I want to feel. Then the 6 to 8 weeks becomes arbitrary. It becomes, a very fluid goal. Yes, you want to make sure that you're going for it, putting both feet in. And, the 6 to 8 weeks, it seems like a decent time frame. You go, yes, I can dedicate 6 to 8 weeks of my life to going for this. It's a good time frame. You can go, okay, I can set 2 months aside. Brilliant. Do it and go for it. But if you get to the end of those 6 to 8 weeks and you're not quite there, that's fine as well, because you'll be much further on than you were at the beginning. You're on the road. There's that lovely analogy that people who are going through the program, excuse me, will have seen of Rob's Cambridge to London. You're on that motorway, you're on that highway, you're going from that destination to that destination. You're 6 to 8 weeks further in. Okay, you might not have reached your destination yet, but you're getting there. So you've just got to keep going. Yeah. And I think that's really, really important. And I think just from my own perspective, the perfectionism side of things and the social anxiety side of things, this comparison. Well, they were over it. Why am I not? I must not be good enough. I must be different. They were able to do it. They can do that and I can't do that. I must be the worst emetophobe ever. I must be the worst case ever. This comparison with other people and their time frames and what they were able to achieve is never helpful, because everybody's different. And this was something I struggled to get my head around, Sam. I don't know about you. But when I was an emetophobe myself, I thought, well, everybody with emetophobia will do the same things. They will all avoid the same things. They will all think the same things. They will all do all the same safety-seeking behaviours as I do. And it was my coach at the time and said, that's not true. And I went, of course it is. I battled with it because I was like, of course it is, because why wouldn't you avoid these things if you're an emetophobe? But now, sitting on my side of things and taking countless people through the program, not one emetophobe is the same. Not one.
Not at all. There's so many variations. I've had people who will avoid meats at all costs, and I've had people who their safety food is a rotisserie chicken.
Yes.
There's no rules to emetophobia because we set all the rules.
Yes.
We set all of the boundaries, and it's so important to not do that comparison. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's, like, I hear that so much, but your emetophobia doesn't look like everybody else's emetophobia, and your journey doesn't have to be like everybody else's either.
No.
And it's really that consistency and that effort. And I'm this exact same as you. At the end of the program, even though I wasn't where I wanted to be, I could clearly see the way out.
Yes.
I could clearly see the path forward, because it's just like, oh, well, if I've made this much progress, if I feel this different, then why couldn't I just keep going?
Yes.
And that keep going, I think, is ultimately what we're trying to get at for people here, is that you've put all this work in, you've put all this effort in, you're learning how your brain works, you're changing your actions, you're changing your thinking. Just keep going.
Yes.
And you're going to get to where you want to be.
Absolutely. And stop the comparison in your mind. When you find yourself comparing yourself, when you find yourself beating yourself up, putting yourself down, telling yourself you should be where you have decided that you should be. I mean, some people don't do the 6 to 8 weeks. Some people say, well, I remember taking a lovely lady through, I'm getting married in 5. I need to be over it in 5. She'd set herself this goal of, right, I'm getting over it. She was, actually, which was fantastic. But, you set this arbitrary goal for yourself. That's something that you've set for yourself. Okay. The 6 to 8 weeks that we've put there is because that was the average taken for the people going through in this 2014 study. And it's consistently been the average of people going through this program. Yeah. But that does not mean it needs to be your journey. It does not matter what other people's journeys are and where they start. And the comparison is only slowing you down. Because the more you're sat there spending time comparing yourself to other people and other people's journeys, you're not managing your thinking. You're buying into social anxiety. You're lowering your self-esteem. You're lowering your self-belief, which is contradictory to the program. So you're putting in the wrong kind of effort by doing that.
Keeping yourself stuck.
Absolutely.
It's really important, too, to know that just because you have the thought, like, just to reiterate, just because you have the thought that's there, because you might create a little bit of anxiety, because you might feel uncomfortable, that does not mean you are not over it. What's really important is the definition that you set in your mind of over it. So go to it knowing that as long as I apply these things and challenge yourself in other areas, sometimes like your challenges going through the program have nothing to do with the phobia, but you can always draw a direct comparison of putting yourself in a situation that's a little uncomfortable, having to tolerate it, moving through it, and processing it as a positive experience. That's exactly how you'd have to handle being sick. It's an uncomfortable situation that you don't like and you don't want to feel, but you're going to tolerate it and you're going to move through it and you're going to go on with your life. So there are direct parallels. So understanding that those things are just helping you grow and over it is when you can truly say, okay, I don't want to get sick, but I'll handle it. I'll handle it. Everything else is a habit. Everything else is possibly maybe a balloon that you've kept full. Everything else is you expanding your comfort zone a little bit. And that's going to feel weird. And like you said, it's going to feel clunky. But as long as you keep doing that, don't set over it in your head as never experiencing anxiety again.
Yes.
Because that's just not reasonable. It's not helpful. It's definitely not powerful. And it's giving in, like you said, to that social anxiety and the assumption that we are making that nobody else is experiencing anything that's uncomfortable and unpleasant. And that's not true. You're a human being. You're going to feel things that aren't great.
Absolutely.
But pushing through it. That's how you do it. You push through it. You cope. You encourage yourself. You are proud of yourself for doing it. And eventually your comfort zone is wide open.
Yes.
And you just handle life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're completely right. You know, the challenges that you set for yourself when you feel ready to with emetophobia, you are going to create some discomfort there and some anxiety. But anybody, even without emetophobia or anxiety in general, if they're doing something brand new for the first time, it's very, very normal and almost a natural thing to create a bit of anxiety or a bit of nerves or a bit of excitement, because we know that nerves and excitement are the same bodily sensation, right? So if I'm doing, I don't know, rock climbing, I've joined a new club, I'm going to go rock climbing for the first time, I've never met any of these people before and I don't know what I'm doing, and they're all just flying up this this rock wall and I'm going, I don't know what that is, and they're saying grab your carabiner and I don't know what that is, right? You may feel uncomfortable in that situation, but being able to tolerate that and know that that's nothing to be afraid of. That's just an emotion that I'm creating. I don't need to be afraid of my emotions. I can sit with them. I can tolerate them. I can move through them. It's exactly the same skill set. And you don't want to say, okay, well, to be completely emetophobia-free, I need to have no anxiety. Because anxiety is a normal human state. It's a normal human function. And it's not something to be avoided.
And you can create a little anxiety around vomiting and not be emetophobic. Like you can hate being sick and not being emetophobic. So I think the people going through this have in your head, the minute I say I'm not going to like it, but I can cope, you are out of the world of emetophobia. Every skills that you need to develop and your comfort zone that needs to expand. And if I would have had it in my brain that way, I probably would have put loads more effort into changing some of those beliefs. And that's what I really wish that I would have known. And it's really all about how you're going to be talking to yourself about your recovery. And once you are out of that world of emetophobia and you can, okay, I might hate it, but I can handle it.
Yep.
Awesome. Look where you are. Now, do you know how many people without emetophobia hate throwing up?
Yes.
And that's okay. There's also people who don't care. So there is a wide spectrum. It's not black and white, right? It's not all people throwing up are emetophobic. And in order to not be emetophobic, I have to be totally neutral. And some people are like, you know, I want to just be okay with throwing up.
Yeah.
That's not always how some people are. And that's perfectly okay. But it's the fear that we create around it. And when we remove the element of the fear, we remove the emetophobia, and everything else is just a spectrum of recovery.
Yes, brilliant. Lovely. And I think a good analogy for that, or one that may be a good analogy for that, is that most people, or a lot of people, don't enjoy getting vaccinations or needles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's not something they go, oh, yummy, yes, I really want one of those. Thank you, please, let's. Some people really don't mind. Some people are very indifferent to it, the same as some people are very indifferent to throwing up. But some people really have to coach themselves through, and they've got to get a vaccination, they've got to get a needle or a shot. They go, oh, okay, and they've got to big themselves up, and they've got to coach themselves through it, and they've got to talk kindly to themselves, and they've really got to put the effort in to get themselves through it. but they don't have a phobia of needles. They just really don't like it. Because when it's over, they move on with their life, which is exactly the same as a really strong dislike of being sick. I really don't want to do it. I don't like it. But if I have to, I can. That's not a metaphobia.
Exactly. And I think we're so used to, when we live in the world of emetophobia, having all of these negative feelings around being sick, that's what we tie to being emetophobic.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to kind of disassociate those two things together and understand, like, you don't have to like it. You just have to know, okay, we're going to rather not, but if I do, then let's just deal with it. And I'd rather move on with my life. I'd rather not sit and create all this anxiety and worry for weeks at a time and obsess and bleach and go through the whole process. I just want to move on with my life. And that's a perfectly healthy reaction and response to being sick. And that can be the goal. So be aware as you go through this and you're going through the process. The perfectionist view of like, well, I can never be anxious. I have to like it. I have to be neutral to it. No, you don't. You just have to know that you can cope. And when you know you can cope, you're on the right road.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that's covered everything that we wanted to say, Sam, really, isn't it? I think we've got our, key takeaways that yes, it's possible. Yes, aim for it, because then you're going to put a load of effort in and you're going to really go for it. So aim for it, but don't see it and don't set it as a pass or fail. It's not a pass or fail. It's not a deadline. There's no deadline there. Your journey is your journey. Stop comparing yourself. Just focus on applying those things, these skills, as consistently as you can, and it is entirely predictable. You will overcome emetophobia, no matter how long that takes you.
A perfect summary. Absolutely.
Fabulous. Lovely. Okay, well, thank you for joining us today, Sarah. It's been a pleasure as always.
Always, Michelle. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And I'll see you soon.
See you soon.